Changing the coolant on a 2018 Honda Accord starts by opening the driver's door and pulling the hood release towards you. The hood release lever is located midline in front of the Honda emblem. Push the hood release lever to the left and lift the hood. Free the hood prop from its receiver and swing it into the passenger side receiver in the hood. First, we'll check the current coolant level in both the radiator and the coolant overflow reservoir. With a completely cooled engine, to avoid scalding hot liquid burns, turn the radiator cap counterclockwise, lift, and remove. If the vehicle engine is slightly warm, to avoid spray, use a towel to cover and remove the radiator cap. Peer into the radiator. The fluid should be at or very near the top of the radiator. The current level isn't perfect, but it isn't terrible either. Wipe the area where the cap was seated to remove grime. If you're reusing the cap, be sure to clean underneath and inspect the seals. The cap should be replaced at minimum every 100,000 miles, or ideally, every fluid change. Here is the replacement Gates radiator cap that I'll be installing. With the vehicle lifted at the front jack points just behind the wheels and a supporting jack stand, we'll need to locate the radiator drain petcock valve. The valve is located here and can be accessed without removing the splash shield. Using the oil filter as a reference point, if you place your head here and look towards the driver's side of the vehicle, this is what you'll see. Here's the oil filter, and here is the valve we are after. This is a closer look at that valve from this vantage point. Shoving your arm into this access path will allow you to reach it. To open the valve, you'll turn it counterclockwise until fluid starts to flow. Be careful. After 2.5 to 3 turns, stop turning or you'll regret the mess you'll make. Ask me how I know how. If you need to, or would rather remove the splash shield, here are the 4 quarter-turn flathead screws that will need loosened and removed. To the rear, there are 2 Phillips retention screws which can be a rusty nightmare. Use penetrating fluid and channel locks as needed to remove these. After all 6 screws have been removed, pull the splash shield towards the rear of the vehicle and lower it. Here's a non-chaotic view of how many turns are required to start the flow of liquid. Once the fluid has mostly stopped dripping, turn the petcock valve clockwise to close it fully. The coolant overflow reservoir is just behind the windshield wiper fluid reservoir. Remove the push fastener holding the windshield wiper fluid reservoir fill neck in place by lifting the center and then removing it. Remove the windshield wiper fluid reservoir fill neck by pulling it straight out. Remove the coolant overflow reservoir cap and drain tube. Remove the coolant overflow reservoir by pushing it to the left and lifting up with a rocking motion. Check the fluid level within the reservoir. Ideally, this should have fluid inside at the halfway point between the minimum and maximum fluid level lines. Thoroughly empty, clean out, and dry the coolant reservoir. Mine is almost bone dry, which hopefully is not an indication of a radiator leak or a failed head gasket. We'll monitor fluid levels after the change to see if there is a bigger issue at hand. We'll be using only Honda Genuine Type 2 50/50 pre-diluted coolant. This extended life coolant should be replaced at least every 100,000 miles or every 5 years. Open a new coolant container and be sure to remove all protective barriers, not allowing any to fall inside the container. Place a funnel in the now cleaned coolant reservoir and fill it to the midpoint between maximum and minimum. Remove the funnel from the reservoir. The reservoir has a channel on the back which must be fed into the fastening receiver shown here. Push the coolant reservoir into its receiver until it is securely seated. Place the radiator overflow hose back into the reservoir and turn the cap clockwise to secure it. Press the overflow hose into the clip shown here. The windshield fluid fill neck receiver is here, and we will need to press the fill neck back into this. Push the coolant overflow hose into the clip on the side of the wiper fluid fill neck. Place the push rivet back into place and depress the center to fasten it. I highly recommend using one of these no-spill funnel kits. This is installed by first inserting the only neck adapter that will fit into the radiator mouth, placing and twisting the screw cap to fasten, and then setting the funnel in place. With a sideways turned container to avoid spilling, pour coolant into the funnel. The 10th generation Honda Accord with a 1.5-liter engine requires 1.59 gallons of fluid. The 2.0 requires 1.34 gallons. You'll likely pour just over 1 gallon into the radiator and then another half or so into the reservoir. Once the radiator stops accepting fluid, get into the vehicle. Start the car, which will immediately cause the radiator to start gulping fluid from the funnel shown here. Keep an eye on this and keep it filled. With the vehicle running, immediately turn on the HVAC system and set it to full. Turn the heat up to high on both sides of the car to cycle fluid through the heater core. Monitor the vehicle operating temperature. Run the vehicle for about 15 minutes, but the key is that the temperature reaches the halfway point shown here. We want the fan to kick on 2 to 3 times while the vehicle is running to make sure the thermostat opens and the coolant flows through. I give the top coolant hose a light squeeze to agitate the fluid within further and release any remaining air bubbles that may exist. Place a stopper in the no spill funnel, unscrew the cap, and lift it with the adapter and screw cap. Dispose of this fluid properly. Place the radiator cap on the radiator opening, press downward, and turn clockwise to lock it into place. Be sure to clear any maintenance minders you may have received by clicking on the home button, scrolling to maintenance, and then selecting to either clear the selected item or all. Don't judge me. I'm addressing the others, and the coolant was just a proactive measure. If you remove the splash shield, you'll need to return that minding the front lip. I'd recommend anti-seize on those 2 annoying Phillips retention screws and then returning the 4 quarter-turn flathead screws. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and please consider supporting my channel through the links below.